Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Chronic Chronicles. I'm your host, Lexy Halloran, and today we're joined by Cara, who has been navigating life with Crohn's disease, POTS, gastroparesis, and a couple of other things for the past 7 years. Through her journey, she's become a pretty powerful advocate, shedding light on what daily life with Crohn's disease looks like, especially when you're managing multiple complex conditions. Her story is really interesting, and in this episode, we'll explore her path to diagnosis, the challenges she faces day to day, and how she uses her voice to raise awareness and support others in the chronic illness community. Let's get into it.
Well, my name is Cara. I am 22 and I'm from Mississippi. I have been dealing with chronic illnesses for about 7 years now. I was diagnosed when I had just turned 16. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And over the last 7 years, it has just been a domino effect of one diagnosis after the other. And now I'm here just winging every day, doing the best I can.
Yeah. Okay, so you're 22 now, and you've been dealing with this for like 7 years. So, wow. Yeah, so you were 16. You were just a little baby.
Oh, I had just turned 16.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 weeks later, I got diagnosed with Crohn's. Looking back,
What
I'm like, I was a baby.
I know. What like symptoms set you off on that? Like, was it kind of sudden that you were like, oh, something's wrong and you were going to doctor's appointments? Or was this kind of like you had symptoms for a while and then it went
Well,
there?
ever since I was a kid, I always had stomach issues. They were kind of on and
Hmm.
off, nothing too crazy, stomach ache here or there.
Yeah.
When I was in fourth grade, I got diagnosed. Like things got pretty bad. So I ended up going to a GI doctor and they were like, oh, you have gastritis. We'll put you on this medicine. In a few weeks, you'll be good. And
Yeah.
it worked. And so it was kind of a yearly thing. Like once a year, I'd kind of have a flare up of it. I'd
Hmm.
take the medicine. A few weeks later, I'd be better. When I guess it was a couple of months before I turned 16, the symptoms, like it usually happened every summer that the gastritis came back. So I skipped a summer and we were like, oh, maybe I'm growing out of it. Maybe my body is adjusting. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, something.
And then it was like that next summer, things hit the fan. I was sleeping 24/7 and I don't nap. Like I was sleeping all day,
Yeah.
every day, falling asleep in the most random places. I had really bad stomach pain. I was losing weight, had no appetite, was so nauseous, so weak. Um, and it all happened pretty quick. Looking back, it's kind of a
Mhm.
blur because I was just in fight or flight. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to my GI that I had had for all these years and explaining, and nobody even like Crohn's was not even on the radar. They were like,
Yeah.
maybe it's IBS, maybe it's, I don't even remember some of the other things, but they were strictly like, oh, maybe it's just IBS or whatever. So we scheduled um, your normal like inflammatory markers, CT scan,
Yeah.
scopes, all the things. And things, we did blood work and things started kind of coming back. And we were like, maybe this is more to it than that. And I ended up having a scope done, an upper and lower. And there was a
Those are
spot,
fun.
a girl told me about it. And so there actually ended up being a spot, my ileum, which I had inflammation and, irritation everywhere.
Yeah.
But my ileum was very unwell. And they were like, they woke me up. I actually had a HIDA scan the day before that to check my gallbladder. And my GI
Hmm.
woke me up and was like, well, I have good news and bad news. And I was like, okay. And she was like, your HIDA scan looked great. Your gallbladder is fine. She was like, but your ileum, you have inflammation everywhere, but your ileum is really not good. She was like, I
Hmm.
think that you have Crohn's disease. She was like, because that's like the Crohn's hotspot. So if you have inflammation, redness, ulcers there, it typically indicates Crohn's. And so they were like, we took biopsies and we're going to send them off and we'll get back with you. And maybe in my, it was kind of weird because it had not been like that was not even on the radar.
Yeah.
I was like, boom,
Yeah.
have this. And so a few, not even a week later, my mom got a call from the clinic and they were like, hey, look, like we're sending you to our IBD specialist. That's all we can tell you, but that's where you're having to go. And of course, that's like culture
Hmm.
shock because we're like, what is wrong with me? And
Yeah.
the appointment and they discussed results and we kind of worked up a treatment plan for that time and that was
Yeah.
that little journey.
That's scary though. Like I hate when I mean, I know that they have to do that. Like they have to talk to you about results in person most of the time, but like I hate when they do that because I'm like, can you just tell me if
Yeah.
I'm dying,
And
please?
at that point I was still a kid. And so my mom,
Yeah.
she kept calling and she was like, can somebody tell me anything? Like just something to prepare us for what we're about to walk into. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
obviously I probably have it if they're sending me from a standard GI to a IBD specialist. Like
Right.
they don't just do that for the heck of it. And she was like, well, yeah, and so I had I want to say the appointment was a few weeks out. So I had kind of already prepared. I had been looking at what I could find research wise and
Yeah.
trying to see about it because it wasn't, you have Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis was not even brought up. They said Crohn's. So I looked into all of it, all that I could think of. So I went into the appointment prepared. But
Hmm.
I don't know that anything really prepares you
Yeah.
to walk
Probably
into
not.
it.
Yeah. Also, side comment, I got my gallbladder taken out when I was 15. So I had that HIDA scan and yeah, that it makes you so nauseous. It
It's
is
I don't have a
awful.
gallbladder anymore. I had it taken out like 3 years ago, but
Hmm.
the scan, I don't know if did you have to drink the stuff or did you get the IV contrast?
I had to drink something.
Okay.
And wait, I don't remember actually. I had so many scans. I don't actually remember. I just remember being super nauseous, but I've had IV contrast before, like that makes you feel like you're gonna pee and like really warm, but that's
Yeah.
different. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I had several HIDA scans because it was always like,
Okay.
I had issues. Let's check the gallbladder. Let's check the gallbladder.
Yeah.
So my very first HIDA scan I had, the day before I had the scope, and
Hmm.
I had it done, and I was like, listen, I can't keep anything down. There's no way I can drink this protein. There's no way I can drink this shake.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, you're just gonna have to try. So I sat back there crying for like 15 minutes because
Um,
I couldn't even get a sip down. I was
yeah.
holding my puke bag, like I'm struggling. And the guy's like, well, I guess he thought it scared me, but he was like, well, if you don't drink this, I'm gonna have to give you an IV. And I was like, okay, give me the
Yeah,
IV.
that's fine.
Give me the IV. So finally, I guess it was like her motherly instinct. My mom was out in the waiting room and she got this urge, like she just felt like something was wrong. She knew nothing. She just felt like something was wrong. So she went back there, even though she wasn't supposed to. She came back into the room, and when she opened the door, he was yelling at me because I wouldn't drink the drink, and I was sitting
Oh
there
my
crying.
God.
And so she was like, "Give her the IV right now." And so they did the
Yeah.
IV, and then of course, whatever medication they push through the IV kills me. Like it makes you so
Yeah.
nauseous. I don't know what it. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't even really remember because like back in like middle school and high school, I literally was getting so many. I was in the hospital all the time, like getting scans and stuff and like tests, and we couldn't figure out like I just had so many things. Like,
Yeah,
did I have acid reflux? Because I would like, I went through this like phase. I don't even think I've talked about this actually on the podcast, but I went through this phase in like seventh, eighth, ninth grade where anytime I would eat anything, I would like gag, like, and I would get full really fast. Like I just didn't really eat that much, and I had a really hard time like gaining weight. And so, but my mom, bless her, she thought that I was just really picky and I was like stubborn and I didn't want to eat. So she would like she would make me like finish my plate and I would be like gagging and like, but also when I would go to bed, I would complain about like heartburn and stuff. But she didn't know, like, also my mom was a really young mom, but she didn't know that like it was heartburn. I didn't know it was heartburn because I was a kid. But I would just
yeah,
say that like my chest hurt really bad and my throat like hurt really bad. And I would always have like this like gag and like burping and stuff. So then finally, My mom was just like, if you won't eat, I'm gonna have to take you to the doctors. And like, what if they have to give you a feeding tube or something because you can't gain weight? And I
They
was
think
just
it
like,
scares us, but I'm
I know, and
like,
I'm
I
like,
don't feel this.
okay.
So, okay, do
I know,
it.
I'm like, that's fine. We can go to the doctors. Like something's wrong with my mouth. I don't know, like my throat hurts.
Yeah.
Um, and then they did like I got scopes and I remember having to drink like a bunch of stuff before I got, but I was like so young, I don't even remember like really what any of them were.
Yeah.
But whatever one you do to get tested for like acid reflux and stuff, did that. And then yeah, in high school when I was 15, I was in and out of the hospital a lot for I guess gallbladder attacks, but now as an adult, I still get like what I thought were gallbladder attacks back then, but I haven't had a gallbladder since I was 15. So now my doctors are like, "Oh, this was probably endometriosis," like and we just didn't know that it can be all over, but I had it like where my gallbladder was. And
Yeah.
then when I did the gallbladder function test, it was functioning at 2%. So they were like, "Oh, we have to take this out like now." And
There
I
you
was
go.
like, "Oh, okay, interesting." But anyways, the point of that was is yeah, the scan, whatever they give you makes you super nauseous and that was awful.
Oh, I hate it. Like I have a picture of me, my last one that I had when my function was like, when they had to take it out.
Yeah.
I was laying on the table. I had puke bag in one hand. They had me covered in ice rags. And it was like
Mm-hmm.
they gave it to you for every so often for like, or for me, for
Yeah.
every so often for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And once that 15 minutes was up, I was fine. But I do this weird thing when I get really nauseous, like I hate throwing up. I hate, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, Lord, thank you for blessing me with this. But when I get nauseous, I shake really, really bad. Like I panic.
Mm-hmm.
I get so shaky. So like I'm sitting there, I'm so nauseous. The machine is like right there on you. There's no moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I shook so much for 15 minutes that at like the 20-25 minute mark, I was like, I gotta pee. I gotta go bad. And they were like, honey, you can't get up. Like you still have 20 more minutes. And I'm like, oh, I can't hold it. And they were
Yeah.
like, well, we don't know if we've gotten enough like enough pictures. And I'm like, screw that. Like, sorry,
I'm
but
done.
it's either on this table or in the bathroom. And so they got so upset with me. They were like, we cannot believe you. They ended up getting enough pictures. It was perfectly.
Yeah.
But I was like, y'all, no, no,
No,
thank
like this is awful. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I like kind of blacked out all of the scans and stuff that I had, but that one in particular, I remember how incredibly nauseous I was. And then
you.
I also remember whoever was doing the scan, which looking back on it, like I don't think they were supposed to say anything, but like they did the scans and they came back and I just remember them like immediate I don't even know. I had my doctor like immediately come back in and my mom wasn't in there yet. And they were like, "Yeah, we need to schedule surgery like now." And I was just like, "Huh?" Like what? I'm like, "Where's my mom? Like what is going on?"
Hi,
I was
mommy.
like, "When?" And
Right?
it was like right before Christmas. Like I had surgery a couple of days before Christmas. It was awful. I was on like a liquid diet at Thanksgiving because they couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was
Yeah.
like, "This sucks." I'm on
Yeah.
like a liquid diet and everyone else is eating Thanksgiving dinner. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm the worst. I love food. Like I love
Hmm.
it. I will eat my little heart away knowing it's going to make me so sick. So like for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, especially the main holidays, Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
Christmas, I sit there and that's kind of it's a good and a bad thing, but it's when reality hits and I'm like, okay, I'm not normal and I can't eat these huge plates of food. That's not fair.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway and I'll suffer, which ends up being a bad thing too because I'm sick
Yeah.
because I just tried to be normal. And then I
Yeah.
have people who are like, well, you ate Thanksgiving, you ate Christmas food. Like, why you say you can't eat, but you did? And I'm
Yeah.
like,
You
it's
did
not.
not see the aftermath of that.
I'm like, it's not. I'm like, imagine not being able to eat and have to sit around a table with people eating.
I
Like,
know. Yeah, no,
the
that's
same
awful.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really quick for anybody listening that doesn't know what Crohn's disease is, can you give like a brief explanation on what it is?
Yeah, so Crohn's disease is an inflammatory bowel disease, and it's where your immune system attacks your GI tract. So it can attack anywhere from your mouth to your butt, literally anywhere. There's two types of IBD. You have Crohn's, and then you have ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis is mainly large intestines for the most part, and then Crohn's disease literally can be anywhere for me. I've had it active in my stomach, in my mine is specifically small intestines. So
Mhm.
I really don't have any problems with my large intestines, but a lot of people will have, if they have Crohn's disease, they'll have bleeding gums and ulcers all in their mouths and down their throat. And,
Interesting.
your
Yeah.
immune system sees your GI tract as foreign and it goes for it.
Yeah. So Crohn's disease technically an autoimmune
It
condition
is.
then? Yeah. So when you do, sorry, I'm also kind of ignorant to Crohn's disease overall, but when you get diagnosed for it, from what I've seen, like they do imaging to see if they can find ulcers, right? But can you get diagnosed without imaging? Can you just do like an autoimmune panel and or does it have to be kind of both for it to be?
But I don't know, of course, I'm just saying this
Hmm.
based off of my experience, but for me, they did do like an autoimmune, I think, is it an ANA, like the autoimmune?
Yeah, yeah,
And I've had several done. I have several autoimmune problems, and they're not accurate.
yeah.
One time it'll come back positive, one time it'll come back negative. And my doctors have always told me that it's not very accurate. The way that I've always been told is Crohn's disease has to be confirmed by biopsies. Like that's really the
Hmm.
only way to get an accurate diagnosis. So for me, they did my scopes and they were like, all right, we can see you got inflammation on the upper scope, you've got inflammation on the lower scope. We need to see what's in between that. So I ended up
Okay.
doing pill cam about 3, 4 weeks later so we could really figure out what we were looking at. And so I did that pill cam, and the pill cam took, we already had the confirmed biopsies from the scopes. So we weren't really,
Yeah.
I already had the diagnosis. We just needed to see what we were looking at. And so we did the pill cam, which takes 3 pictures a second throughout your entire GI tract. Like I
Wow.
think the pill runs for 8 hours. So it takes pictures 3 times a second for 8 hours.
That was a
And
shit ton of pictures.
tell me,
A lot of pictures.
I know. And so, and I think, it ends up being like video because it's so
Yeah.
neat, but I'm like that. And then you send it off and you have all of these medical professionals that watch your 8 hours of footage and they, flag whatever they see wrong.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a cool concept, but like I don't know that you could skip the scopes and go straight into a pill cam
Hmm.
without, because I mean, inflammation, you can have just like gastritis and have inflammation, but also my gastritis ended up being Crohn's disease, so like
Right.
you really need that confirmed biopsy.
Yeah, the biopsy is really what is actually giving you like the diagnosis to go towards like what treatment plan?
Uh-huh.
Interesting. Okay. What other conditions do you have right now?
So I have arthritis that is kind of a secondary condition to the Crohn's disease. Um,
Hmm.
so when my Crohn's was really bad, the arthritis was really bad. Now that my Crohn's is in remission, the arthritis is, in remission.
Hmm.
I have fibromyalgia. I have gastroparesis. That is my main problem right now. I
Hmm.
had MALS. I had surgery for it about a year and a half ago, and it was successful. So I have been pretty much MALS pain free for
That's good.
a year and a half. And then I also have POTS. So
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like once you get one diagnosis, you just open up all these other things.
and my one of my doctors actually, so I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and then it was like 4 months later I started having the arthritis problem, but we kind
Hmm.
of put it on the back burner because we were like, well, that's not important, like versus your weight
Yeah.
loss and your that's not important. Let's put it on the back burner. And so we put that on the back burner, and then it was like 3 or 4 months later, I had more issues, and it was like a domino effect. And
Hmm.
my cardiologist actually told me, he was like, he said with autoimmunes, it's just a matter of time. He was like, one triggers another, triggers another. He said, and it is just a domino effect until you can get them under control
Mm-hmm.
and get them at bay. And I was like, oh my gosh, and which was so true because I had problem after problem until we were able to
Yeah.
get them under control, which is so hard when you're dealing with five different things. It's like, where do you even begin?
Yeah, like which one do you try to focus on first? I know I've gone through like very similar just with like the autoimmune inflammation train of getting it's just like I don't know, I feel like I went through this probably 4 year thing where it felt like I had a new symptom like every couple of weeks. I'm like, "Oh, like what is this now?" Like I with endometriosis, I my big symptom was cramping. Like I was in so
Yeah.
much pain with my cramping and then like bloating and stuff. And I felt like I kind of got that under control for a minute. And then once I got that under control, all of a sudden like my heart rate was like freaking out all the time. Like I would go on I oh my gosh, I will never forget this one time I went on a like jog. I was not running. It was like a slight jog and a fast walk because I couldn't really run. Like I was out of shape, whatever. And well, I say out of shape, but I like
I know what you mean. Your
like
body
post high school, like I wasn't really out of shape, but you know what I mean. I should have been able to run. So I was on this like little jog, like fast walk, and my Apple Watch alerted me because my heart rate was over 200 and I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" I was like, "What's happening here?" And I thought it was wrong. I was like,
yeah,
"That's weird," because I didn't like feel like my heart was racing I mean, I felt like it was fast, but I didn't feel like it was 200. And I was
right,
like, "That's weird." I also was like 21 and I'm like, okay, weird. So then
right.
I just like really slowed down my walk and I was trying to like deep breathe and it wasn't slowing down. And then I kind of ignored it and it happened like two more times. And then I was working at the hospital at the time, like in dialysis. And I was walking like between my patients, brisk walking. But again, like my heart rate alerted, like my watch alerted me that my heart rate was over 200. And I was like, what in the actual? I was like, I'm just walking. Like I don't really understand what's going on. Um, and then yeah, I had to do like Holter monitors, did a stress test, all that fun stuff, and they found a mitral valve prolapse, but my cardiologist was like, this shouldn't cause symptoms
Mhm.
like that. So then we kept moving and I ended up getting diagnosed with POTS like literally 3 years after those first symptoms. Like it took a long time to get diagnosed with it
Oh,
because it kind of just kept going on the back burner because I kept getting like new things that were happening. This episode is brought to you by Period Isle. Right now, they're doing 50% off their imperfect kiwi and cobalt period underwear. These slightly less than perfect, but still fully functional and super comfy underwear are about 50% off for a limited time only. And if you use my code Chronic Chronicles, you can get a pair for just $22, which is a steal for reliable, sustainable period underwear. If you've been curious about period underwear or you just need to stock up, now's the perfect time. Check out Period Isle before they're gone. And then all of a sudden, I started getting like fainting spells, but I think I only actually passed out twice, like that I know of, like actually like to the floor, passed out twice. But I would get a lot of like pre-syncope things, like that was awful. I remember one time I was driving and I felt like I was getting like pre-syncope, like everything was getting really, really warm and like my vision was getting hazy and I was like, I am on the highway. I was like, this cannot.
so scary. When my POTS started out, which we didn't know it was POTS at the time,
Hmm.
it for me it was more so I never felt my heart racing as fast as when we would check it to see what it
Hmm.
was. I never really felt it racing, but I had really bad headaches, really bad neck pain,
Mm.
body aches, like dizziness. Like I always felt like I had the flu.
Yeah.
And that's the only way like I got terrible migraines. And finally, like we kind of watched it and we would check. I'd be laying down, I had been napping, and wake up and
Yeah.
my heart rate is 150. And with my POTS, I get really high blood pressure. My blood pressure does
Hmm.
not drop. So my blood pressure was sitting at like 170 over 110
Yeah.
daily, which in general will make you feel bad. But um, I never really passed out. I remember vividly passing out twice. One time I was in junior high, and maybe that could have been the start of it. I don't know. And I had
Yeah.
jumped up out of bed one morning, and my mom came into my room, and I stretched. And when I stretched, I passed out in her arms. And then, which that would have been like 3 or 4 years before diagnosis. So maybe it was just,
Yeah.
but, and then when I was in
But
the,
maybe.
yeah, it makes you think. Like, you'll never
Yeah.
know. It just makes you think.
Hmm.
And when I was in the middle of getting diagnosed, I was literally right outside my bedroom door in the
Hmm.
hallway. And I was like, oh, I don't, like you feel like you're going to pass out, but you feel like you're going to pass out every day. So you're like, oh, I'll just
Yeah.
keep walking. Well, I kept
Yeah.
walking and I fell and passed out. And I think that's really probably only been, I may have passed out one other time, but luckily I don't pass out that much.
I know. Thankfully, I don't either. Like, it's only been those like two times.
But I
And
will get super dizzy. Like you said, just
yeah,
driving down the road and I'm like, why am I so dizzy? And I'll have to pull over and
I get that. And I don't get it that much anymore. Like, I've tried to really get the whole POTS stuff under control.
yeah.
But I do still every once in a while, I'll just be like doing whatever I'm doing, and then all of a sudden, it almost like it's my pre-syncope symptoms are like really weird. The only way that I can explain them is like I get like a very huge like flush of like warmness like all the way through my body, and I'm like, "Oh wow, like I am like really warm." And then everything kind of just like goes hazy for a minute, or
Mhm.
like a second, I should say. And I have passed out, but then like sometimes I'm just like, "Oh wow, okay. Like I just need to like like I need to sit down," and then it like gets better. But sometimes I also get like it's not I don't know if like maybe my heart actually is racing. I should probably check it when this happens. I'm gonna do that next time. I'm like, I wonder what my heart rate really is. But it doesn't feel like my heart's like rushing. It feels like my heart is like almost like slowing down. Like I feel like my blood is like draining. And I'm just like, whoa, okay. Like my heart feels weird. Everything
It's
kind of
the
feels weird.
oddest sensations you'll ever feel.
Yeah, like it is, and it's super hard to explain too. Like I remember trying to explain that to like just like my primary doctor, and I was like, I sound crazy, like I don't really know how to explain like what my symptoms are with it. The second time I ever passed out, this is just I was in the ER like after driving, like that driving time where I was like, "Oh, I feel really weird. So I ended up pulling over and I like called my boyfriend and I was like, "I feel like I'm gonna pass out again." And this was so I'd only passed out one time, like for real actually passed out, but I had gotten a lot of pre-syncope and I was just like I don't know, like I'm driving. I was on I-75 in Michigan, so like the speed limit is like 70, 75 miles per hour. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm scared that I am actually gonna pass out and I'm driving. And what if I don't catch it? And he was like, just go to the ER. And I was like, okay. So I went there and um he's like with me. I've gotten tons of blood work before. I've gotten tons of IVs. Like I'm not new to this. And
Right.
I'm in this ER and this nurse comes in and they couldn't get my IV, which is weird because I have really good veins. But I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. Well, the one nurse did say, she was like, well, if you're feeling like you're gonna pass out, like maybe you're dehydrated in your veins or whatever. And I was like, okay, fine. So then they had a doctor come in to do the IV, which I was like, why is he doing it? Like, why just get another nurse? I'm
Not
like, what is
afraid.
happening? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. So this doctor came in to do my IV after like two nurses did. Again, don't agree with that. So he comes in, he puts the IV in, and I passed out like when he was putting the IV in, which I've never done before. And he was like, oh, like
You're
this is
just
like,
you're just
yeah.
weak,
He
stuff
was
like
like, oh, you just like are afraid of needles. And I'm like, well, I am afraid. I don't like needles, but I've never, and I like look over to my boyfriend who we've been together for like 10 years, not then, but like now. And but years, he's like seen me through a lot of appointments. And he was like, no, like, she's that's never happened. Like
that.
this is not. And the doctor was just like, whatever. Like it's probably just anxiety. Like that's what it is. And I was just like,
Yeah.
Guys, I'm like, I came here because I was gonna pass out. And then
I
like
know.
you literally actively saw me pass out and you were like, oh, it's anxiety. I
I
was
know.
just so frustrated.
I see, I try to look at things from so many perspectives when it comes, before I get
Hmm.
frustrated and angry. And I try to look at it from not only my perspective, but I'm like, okay, these doctors have so many patients that I'm sure
Yeah.
come in complaining of all these symptoms when there really is nothing wrong.
Hmm.
I see that. But then I'm like, when I feel like when you have patients that are our age or really any age in general, but they've been dealing with it for so long,
Hmm.
at least to the people that I've talked to, we know what we're talking about. We've done research,
Yeah,
know our bodies so right, like so well. And I'm like, just listen to me when I tell you that
I
something
know.
is right.
Especially like thinking about like that ER visit. Like I had told them that I had been dealing with like these things and we hadn't gotten it, like I was scared about them and like we hadn't gotten a diagnosis. And I also like literally had just gotten a whole like I had a Holter monitor like 3 weeks before that. So I was like, I like there is something that is
Right.
going on.
Mhm.
And he just like dismissed me so hard. And I was just like, okay. And then to like finish off that story, they ended up admitting me that night only because I was like something's wrong. Like I don't feel good.
Mhm.
They admitted me and then I ended up leaving like in the middle of the night because I had to share a room with this woman that was like screaming the entire
That,
night.
that's the worst. I
And I
will.
was just like, I'm just gonna leave again. I was like, it's fine. I'll come back. Like, I'll
That
just
they
make an appointment.
No, that valid. I had to stay
Yeah.
in the ER, like one of the hospitals. I have the hospital that's in my town. I don't go to that hospital very often because they're just not, I feel like with the conditions I have, they're just not equipped and they don't know how to handle them. If they,
Hmm.
they either don't know much about them, they don't understand, whatever. So I
Yeah.
do travel to a bigger hospital where they are more equipped and they are just more knowledgeable on my conditions. And it's just safe
Yeah.
for me to go there. And I ended up getting admitted maybe 3-ish months ago. Was it
Hmm.
three? Something like that. And
Yeah.
the hospital was so full that they were holding their patients in the ER, which is typically fine. But because
Hmm.
this place is so big, they have multiple sections in their ER. So I was stuck in like you're stable, but you're waiting on a bed on the floor type unit, which again
Yeah.
it was fine. It was three walls, a chair, a like stretcher, and a curtain. And it was four rooms on one side, three on the other, two or whatever.
Yeah.
And the psych unit, they had maybe two psych rooms in the whole hospital, and they were right outside of my door.
Yeah.
And, you know, the psych patients would wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
screaming. And I'm like, you know what? Like, can I leave AMA? And they're like, you cannot leave AMA. Like, for
Yeah.
your safety, you can't. And I'm like, oh, but I will. Like,
Yeah. I know. I was like, I can't do that. Yeah. I also was just like crying the entire, I left at like 4 a.m. And I felt so bad. I was like, Tyler, please come get me. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, this
no,
lady is screaming and I can't sleep. And also feel like these doctors are just mad at me. And I'm
yeah.
just like, I can't do this. Like,
I
I
think
don't
there should
know.
be just based off of who I've talked to, that have chronic illnesses. I feel
Hmm.
like there should be some kind of rule, but like I just wish doctors understood it more because I'm like, listen, I deal with pain every single day, all day,
Hmm.
24/7. If I go to the ER for help, if I go to the ER because I'm like something's not right, I don't feel good.
Hmm.
Typically there's something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Like exactly. I feel the exact same way. Like if I am actually going to the ER, like putting myself there,
You're right.
um,
Willingly.
something's wrong because I will sit here in my pain until I absolutely cannot. Or like I don't know, yeah, it's just
I know. And
frustrating.
I
But
don't think I've ever really had a time where I willingly went to the ER. and was like, or, said, somebody please take me to the ER right now. And I
Hmm.
got there, the doctors may have been mad about it at first, like, oh, well, this, your blood work looks fine. This looks fine. And me be like, no, something is seriously wrong. And in the long run, something actually was seriously wrong. So,
Yeah.
and I think that kind of goes on to the whole, we have to advocate so much for ourselves. It's
Hmm.
actually insane. Like, you shouldn't compare, but sometimes I'm like, you would never question a patient who has cancer if they say
Yeah.
they don't feel good. You would never
Yeah.
question, like, why are you questioning us
Hmm. I
about?
know. It's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. And speaking on that, like another similar situation, I deal with, like with endometriosis, I have chronic pelvic pain, like really bad cramps frequently. And years ago, I'm on my third IUD right now, but my second IUD, I, it moved and I had really bad pain. I was like, ooh, this is like a different type of pain. Like it's like one-sided and it like is like my cramping most of the time it's like very achy and it can be like stabbing pain, but like if it's like a knife stabbing pain, it's kind of like once and then it goes away for a while and then it might happen again. But this was like all of a sudden it felt like something was stabbing me and it wasn't stopping. It was like somebody was stabbing me over and over and I was like, "Ooh, this is like not good. This hurts really bad." So I went to the ER about that and I was like, "I think something's wrong." Like I thought maybe I had like a cyst or something that like ruptured or something. And the craziest part about it was is that they were like, "Oh, you have endometriosis on your chart. Like you're fine. Like this is, they were like, we're not giving you pain meds." And I was like, no, no. I was like, can you do a scan? Like, I'm like, can you look? Like, and then yeah, it took them forever to actually do that. Forever. And I was just sitting there with my IUD that like flipped upside down. I don't even know how that happened, which I ended up having to get surgically removed. So I'm just like, you couldn't have looked like earlier?
Yeah, it's very frustrating when you go in and you're like, I'm in pain, and they're like, well, of course you're in pain.
Yeah.
You have Crohn's disease. Like, of course your stomach's gonna hurt. And I'm like, no, no, no. This is not what
Yeah.
it typically does. Like, this is not normal. Something is wrong.
Yeah, I'm like it's a different type of pain. Like I know what the endo normally is and like this was different and it's just I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when you have chronic conditions or chronic pain or like anything like that, unfortunately, like you're kind of just you're looked at like, "Oh, well, okay." But I feel like doctors should take that the other way and be like, "Oh, they're here. Like that might mean something." But, whatever. There are good doctors.
I'm really lucky, actually. I can really say I'm very lucky. I have a
Yeah.
great medical team, and they are, I would say, your dream team. Like, if I text them and I say something is wrong, I've been up
Hmm.
all night, I do not feel well, something is wrong, and this isn't just a cold or the flu, they would 100% take me serious, admit me right then and there, listen to my concerns, which I feel like I'm so fortunate enough. But it's like the doctors outside of my standard
Hmm.
little team, like your ER doctors, or I guess you're like, if you go to a like little primary care clinic or something like
Yeah.
that, it's
Yeah.
those doctors that are like, well, I mean, you deal with it every day. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
some blood work. It's fine. We'll send you on your way.
I know. It can be really hard. Uh, so how are your symptoms now? You mentioned that you were in remission for Crohn's. So what does your like everyday life kind of look like managing just general symptoms?
Well, so my Crohn's disease is in remission, which
Hmm.
is a great thing. However, I was told you will still have symptoms. You will still have, even though you're in remission, like that doesn't mean that you're completely better. Like, you still will possibly have symptoms.
Hmm.
It just means it's not active.
Yeah.
So and my Crohn's disease is a very distinct pain. I could tell you, like, I have, gastroparesis, and I had mouse, but of course that is fixed. But my main problem now is gastroparesis, and there's a very distinct difference in between gastroparesis pain and Crohn's
Hmm.
pain. And I will say that my Crohn's really has not given me any issues whatsoever. The only issues I have with it since being in remission is I just don't absorb my nutrients the right way.
Yeah.
Like, so I get very anemic very fast just because my intestines just don't absorb like they should. So my main issue right now is the gastroparesis, and so I'm constantly nauseous, no appetite. Um,
Yeah.
just your standard symptoms. I had surgery mid-December I guess mid-December to hopefully provide some relief for the gastroparesis. Kind of
Yeah.
see, I really haven't noticed anything different, and I'm not going to go into that too much because
Yeah.
I love sharing to help people. I really do. But I don't want somebody to say, well, it didn't work for you. It won't work for me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no. Everybody is so different. But for me right now, I just literally take it minute by minute. I do what I can and just try to live. I
Yeah.
get IV fluid. So, like, that's probably the one thing that I have going for me because, most nausea meds and stuff, they just knock you out. And so, if you take it in the morning, you're out for the day. Like, that's a day
Mhm.
wasted and I hate it because I'm like, well, here's another thing it's taken from me. It's taken another
Yeah.
day because I have to sleep because I'm nauseous. So, but, just running fluids, making sure I'm hydrated and
Yeah.
what I eat, kind of my body and not my mind.
Yeah. That is really hard. I try. I've said this, so I've had this podcast since May, and I think I've said on like literally almost every single episode that I try to do the autoimmune protocol diet, but like it's so hard. It's so
I
I
know.
love sugar. Like
Oh, you and
love.
me both. Which actually,
Love.
I found that sugar, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, sugar makes my symptoms worse. So, like,
Hmm.
I don't really, the only thing, like, if I get, right now, I have a root beer and it's
Hmm.
zero sugar. I don't really eat sweets that much. If I drink anything, it's either going to be zero sugar, like the lowest amount of sugar. I will get a Starbucks drink and sip on it throughout the day,
Hmm.
but I drink like a fifth of the drink. So it's not
Yeah.
enough. But I will say sugar is one thing that really could tear me up if it wanted to.
Living with endometriosis, PCOS, or chronic pelvic pain can be really overwhelming, especially when traditional pain relief just doesn't cut it. That's why I'm so excited to share with you one of my go to products, Octavia CBD suppositories. They're made with all natural, high quality CBD. Octavia suppositories provide targeted pain relief exactly where you need it most. Whether you're dealing with debilitating cramps, pelvic pain, or you just need some extra support during your cycle, these little wonders can help relax muscles, reduce inflammation, and ease discomfort. Here's a couple reasons why I love them so much. They're fast acting, targeted relief without the side effects of traditional pain medications. They're made with clean, natural ingredients, so there's no harsh chemicals or additives. And they're thoughtfully designed for anyone dealing with pelvic pain, period cramps, or chronic conditions like endo. I personally use Octavia during my flares, and it's been a game changer in my pain management routine. If you're looking for a natural, effective way to feel more comfortable in your body, you've got to try them out. Head over to heyoctavia.com and use code Chronicles to get a discount. Yeah, I mean, I've always, like, looking back on my whole life, I've always been very sensitive to sugar. Like, I can remember going to my grandparents' house and I would have like chocolate milk. And I remember one time my grandma was like, "You can make your chocolate milk." And I put so much Hershey's chocolate in it that like I remember I drank it and it like burnt my throat because I put so much chocolate in it. And then I remember like crying about that because I was like, it burnt my throat. Random story, but I've always been like very, very affected by sugar.
Yeah.
And even like my boyfriend and I, we've been together since we were like in high school. And it's so funny because growing up, my mom would always be like, okay, you can't have any sugar after like 6 p.m. because you turn into like a little monster. Like,
Right.
like literally sugar would affect me like emotionally. Like I couldn't like I would have like weird reactions to it and I'd get like slap happy, like laughing and crying, and then I also sometimes would get like very like just like emotional over like the amount of sugar that I had. Like it just really, really affected me. And it would always like it would make my stomach hurt really bad and I would yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but it's so funny because now my boyfriend says the same thing and like I'm just like, wow, so this must really I mean, I know it
Maybe
affects
I am
me.
the problem.
Yeah, I'm like, I know it affects me, but like, wow. So recently we got Taco Bell takeout and I think it was like 8 p.m. and we had like a really long day and I was like, oh, I'll just get Taco Bell, like it's across the street. And he wanted a Baja Blast and I was like, I'm gonna get a Baja Blast. And he was like, do you think that is the best idea? Like, it's 8 p.m. He's like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. The sugar is just
See, people tell
it's
me that
bad.
they're like, go easy, that's gonna make you sick. And I'm like,
Mhm.
shut up, it's not your body.
I know, I'm like, it's gonna be
I mean,
fine.
and I sit there and I'm like, in reality, they are right, but
Hmm.
now I'm not gonna let them be right, and I'm still gonna eat what
Yeah,
I want. And then I get sick later, and I hibernate because I'm like, oh, y'all told me not to, and I did it, and now I don't feel good, and
I
now,
know. I know. Now Tyler will he'll like see me. Again, the other day I got a box of Milk Duds for Christmas, like in my stocking, and I ate like half the box, and which is like really not that bad. Like for
no,
normal people, it's
right,
fine.
yeah,
But he like looks over at me and he was like, "Careful how many of those you're eating." And I'm like, he means that because I'm gonna be crying. Like
yeah.
he doesn't care what I eat. He means that because it's not enjoyable for him.
It's
Like,
not enjoyable for either of us, but there's
yeah,
something they can sell. Yeah, my
yeah.
mom do that quite a bit. She's like, all right, go. I know you're hungry. Like, I know you want to eat this, but
Hmm.
little bites. Let's take it slow. And I'm like, oh, are you saying that for me or for you?
I
Like,
know. I'm like, it's definitely for him. Like
I don't know.
he and
Like, they
he
mean it in the best way.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
means it in the best way. But
yeah.
and I just was like, "Oh, it's fine." He was like, "Okay, keep eating that, but I don't want to hear anything about it. Like deal with that yourself then." And I was like, "Okay, it's
And
fine."
then an hour later, we're crying.
I know, and I'm like, "Okay, great." Oh man. So, what do I want to ask you? Going into some of like coping wise, I know you've had your diagnoses for quite a few years now, so you're probably, well, I say you're probably doing pretty well with it now, but like, I mean, mentally it kind of like comes in waves. So, how have you dealt with being diagnosed with a chronic illness like so young?
Well, in the beginning, this is actually so funny that you mentioned this. So in the beginning, when I've always been like a very faith-driven person. Like I firmly believe that, everything happens for a reason and
Hmm.
God's got a plan for whatever I'm going through. He'll get me through it. Like that was always my mindset. And I'm so thankful that I had it because when I got diagnosed, it was just like, okay, well, this is how God's using me. I don't know what good's going to come out of it, but I do
Hmm.
know that something good will. For year, I mean, probably, up until last year, I would say the beginning of last year, that was
Hmm.
my mindset. And mentally, I was fine. Like, I had so many people on the outside that were like, you need to take care of your mental health. And I'm like, what mental health? Like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I promise I'm fine. And I was like, I didn't have any issue. Like, I was good. I was just going with
Hmm.
the flow and it was what it was. And then last year, I got my central line, I got put on TPN, and I don't know what happened. Really
Yeah.
couldn't tell you, but it was like something switched, and I still had that perspective. Like I know that God is going to use me to do something good. This is all just a part of, his plan. But it was like little things bothered me that typically wouldn't, like comments that people would say. And I'm like, okay, that used to not bother me, and now it's like the end of the world when somebody tells me that.
Yeah.
Just like, and I guess it maybe too because I'm getting older, but I'm watching all my peers live their life and I feel like I'm just stuck here. Like
Yeah.
because my body is stopping me from doing what it should be allowing me to do. I was one of those I'm very stubborn. Yeah, I will admit it. I know it. I'm very stubborn. And so I was
Hmm.
like, you know what? I can deal with this on my own. I know, like, I will get over it. Like, get over it, Cara. And then finally, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should go to therapy. So I started going to therapy last year, like middle of last year. Didn't have a great go round with my first therapist.
Hmm.
I had people tell me like, "Oh, be careful! Like it may take you a while to find who you need." And I had
Hmm.
had people up until this point tell me like anyone with chronic illness ideally should be in therapy, and I'm like, "But I don't need it." And they're like, "You
Yeah.
don't need it until you need it, and then when you need it, it's too late." They were like, "So you should go now." But to me, that was pointless. Why add another doctor? Why add another appointment to the
Yeah.
mix that wasn't necessary? I probably should have listened, but um, met with my first therapist, and I loved her until she started giving me like advice. And then she told me that I needed to, she told me that me and her needed to come up with a plan so that I didn't get sick. And I was like, okay, how do you expect me to do that? Like, what's
Yeah.
your plan? And she was like, so what makes you sick? And I'm like, anything. Like the air I breathe, I could take a sip of water,
Yeah.
I could move wrong. And it could, like I'm walking on eggshells 24/7. She was
Hmm.
like, well, so if eating makes you sick, why don't you just try to eat less? And I was like, well, because if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. But even
Hmm.
if I eat one bite, that might make me sick. And it just like was something that I feel like you don't understand what it's like until you go through it.
Yeah.
So, but I needed someone who could relate and who understood enough, and she just wasn't that for me.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then, I found a second therapist, and
That's going better.
now it's kind of like we have figured out that, and I didn't really think about it like this, but when I first got diagnosed, my body was in like fight or flight. I was living off
Hmm.
of adrenaline, and really I wasn't living at all, but everything was fight or flight adrenaline for years. And so
Hmm.
now it's kind of like it's all just catching up to me, and I'm like, okay, well that's not good because now we've got to go back through 5 years of six,
Yeah.
whatever of problems, but it's going good and I'm excited. And I would tell anyone that's listening, get into therapy.
I I feel like a lot of people with chronic illness probably go through the same thing of like being in fight or flight for so long and
Yeah.
like you think you're doing fine. I like personally, I went through years and years of fight or flight that like I didn't realize I was in
Mm-hmm.
until like probably a year and a half ago, like when I moved to Washington after grad school. I all of a sudden like life just became a little bit more stable and according to my therapist, it was like, because all of a sudden I kind of I remember heavily in grad school, I just like put my chronic illnesses to the back burner. I was like, I don't have time to deal with it. Like something has to go, and this is the
Right.
only thing. I don't know what to do. So like I
Right.
didn't really go to doctor's appointments those 2 years. I didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, my symptoms were still there and like probably worse than like what they were, but I just was ignoring it and like pushing forward. And then when I moved here a year and a half ago, I like life just became a little bit more stable and I had more time for things. And all of a sudden, my chronic illness symptoms were like horrible. I was like, oh my God, I'm sick all the time. I felt like I had the flu all the time. I had low grade fevers. Like I had 100-degree fever for months. I was like,
I did that
yeah,
at one point, like not too long ago. Like I had, which I say I usually run like 97. So I
yeah,
ran like a 90, like high 99 fever
hmm,
for weeks. Like, and my
yeah,
doctor was like, yeah, the body does strange things. And I'm like, that is insane.
yeah, yeah. Literally, I had like an 8 or 9 week fever, like low grade fever, where it was like 99.9 to 100.2, like
Yep.
did not ever go away. And I was like, I feel like shit. Like I'm just so run down. But like my life was way more chill than it had ever been. I was like, I'm only going to work. I'm only working a 9 to 5. Like I have in college and in grad school, I had nannying, waitressing, an
Right.
internship, full-time classes. Like, I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm not even working out. I'm like, I don't understand. And my therapist was basically like, yeah, when life becomes a little bit more stable, your body finally gets out of this like adrenaline fight or flight thing and everything kind of catches up. So now your body is like, "Oh, you have time to listen to me? You're going to
Yeah.
listen to me." Like this is what. So, it
And
is
that's
just really interesting how that happens.
no, I didn't even think about it that way until my new therapist was like,
Mhm.
you were running off of it. You were in fight or flight.
Mhm.
That's strictly it. You were running off of adrenaline. Your body, like that's what you did, and your body can only handle that for so long. And
Yeah.
I'm so. I guess I just didn't think about it because I was like, well, why would I add another appointment on top
Mhm.
of everything else if it's not needed? But
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, well, you're fixing to suffer the consequences of
Yeah.
putting it off for so long. And I'm like, well,
Yeah. It was
okay.
so weird too because I never had, well, I remember like my gynecologist that diagnosed me with endo, her and I didn't have the best relationship, but she like it got to the point where like she knew that I had anxiety, but I didn't know that I had anxiety. Like I didn't agree with her that I had that. And she basically was like, you need to see a therapist and you need to get on anti-anxiety medications or your symptoms will never get better because you have a whole body inflammatory disease and you are stressed out. So like we're just putting fire, like we're putting gasoline on a fire. It's
Yeah.
not working. But I didn't agree with it. I was like, I don't feel anxious. Like, I don't agree with you until, and like looking back on it now, like I was having panic attacks and I didn't even know. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I, I'm in therapy now and I would wake up, like it happened to me recently, but I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought that my bed was shaking. Like, I was like, oh, is this an earthquake? I'm like, what's happening? And I like reached over because I was like, is my cat purring? Like, what is happening? Like,
Right.
it feels like my bed is shaking, but like no one was on the bed with me. And then I like put my Apple Watch on and took my heart rate, and my heart rate was insanely high. And it was like I was having a panic attack like in my sleep.
Yeah.
And I used to have those like years ago, but I never like connected the dots. I just thought that I was like having a nightmare or something because I never like checked my heart rate. But I told my therapist about that and she was like, "Yeah, no, that those are like panic attacks. Like you're waking up in
And
panic."
I didn't know this.
Like,
I learned
"Oh."
this from my therapist too. She didn't, well, like she told someone else this and I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
And lucky for me, I don't have a lot of like medical anxiety. Like I don't get
Yeah.
anxious in a hospital. I don't get anxious for tests. I feel like the more I go through certain tests and procedures, I do get a little anxious about it, but nothing that's like severe panic attacks. It's mainly just I feel so stuck because I'm sitting here watching everyone else live their life, and I'm like, why
Yeah.
can't my body do what it's supposed to so I can do that?
Yeah.
But my therapist had said something about waking up anxious and how when you go to sleep at night, like if you wake up anxious or you tend to find yourself waking up throughout the night anxious, to listen to a sermon before you go to bed or like
Mm.
calming, she's a Christian counselor.
Yeah.
So she was like, listen to your favorite Christian worship playlist. And she said, because you go to sleep and then you're like, there's some part of your brain that is still on and it's still active, and that's the
Yeah.
part that you need to calm so that you're not waking up anxious. And I was like, okay, I don't wake up anxious, but that's very like I would have never thought
Yeah.
like it would have never.
Very interesting.
I know.
Yeah, I try to do when I'm actually going to sleep. I've been having a lot of problems recently, like falling asleep, which has never really been an issue for me before because I'm tired. But I am tired, but I like just
Yeah.
have so many thoughts happening.
Yeah.
So I've been doing like box breathing and like that never really has worked for me, but it started working recently because I literally like make a box in my head like while I'm breathing. So I'm like breathe in on four,
Oh,
breathe
TikTok.
out on four, and I'm like, oh, I'm like actually making a box. And somehow because the box breathing what didn't work for me because I was like, oh, I'm breathing, but I'm still thinking about
Yeah.
everything. I'm like, I can't focus. Like I am breathing, but I'm still thinking about like, oh, how many work emails did I miss? Oh, I have to
Yeah,
edit the podcast. Oh, I have to do all of this stuff. And then I'm like, oh, my back is hurting really bad right now. And like, I literally couldn't turn it off. But
yeah.
then like actually like doing the like making the box in my brain, it actually works. I'm
I'm
like,
gonna have to try that because I have the worst time. Like that is probably like I'm
mm-hmm,
sitting here and I'm constantly like, okay, tomorrow I have to do this, and then it's
mm-hmm.
like I keep adding and I just can't shut my brain off. I have a hard time falling asleep anyway, just because it takes me forever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When I
Yeah.
started therapy though, I was like, this is the one thing that I feel like I actually like. I can't control my. I mean, I can control my symptoms, but
Mm-hmm.
I really can't. Like, I can't
Yeah.
control any of my
You
illness.
can do everything right and still get a flare. Like it's not, and that's the same thing with like every single chronic illness. Like you can do everything by the book, everything correctly that like you think you should do, eat
Mhm.
everything the right way, and you could still get a flare.
Right. I could eat nothing
Because
and
yeah,
still have a
yeah.
problem.
I know. I'm the same way. And I try not to get frustrated with my body, but like it's hard. Like because you're like I'm working so hard to do everything right.
And you're
And
still not working.
yeah, and it still sometimes doesn't work
I
and
know.
can take me away from doing things that I want to do. So it is really frustrating, but you know,
So I'm like,
giving
this is
yourself
the one thing
grace.
that I can do that I feel like I can actually change.
Mm-hmm.
So like I guess I'll do it, make myself feel better.
Yeah. Um, to wrap up, I guess my last question for you is, are there any, I know that we didn't really talk much about social media, but I know you are on social media and you do like quite a bit of kind of like I saw you, I think on TikTok, and you were doing like some day in the life vlog type things. So, are there any like resources or tools or I don't know, like online communities or anything that you found particularly helpful in like feeling less alone?
Well, I kind of have mixed emotions about that. Um,
Hmm.
so I found comfort and peace in sharing my story. Not necessarily for me. Number one, it gave me something to do. Getting to film my day,
Yeah.
and edit it, and it was just fun to me. I loved doing that. It also, I feel like, provided a sense of like giving people from the outside a look in because they
Yeah.
can't be here and they can't see it, so they can see it. And then also, I really, really enjoyed, getting to help people and just making people feel, or I hope that I'm making them feel less alone. I get messages
Yeah.
every day and I love it. Um, there's the chronic illness community on social media, and I feel like
Yeah.
I'm not a fan personally. I mean, I would say a handful of friends
Hmm.
that I have that I've had for years that I met through social media. They're going through the same thing. I can go to them when I'm frustrated, when I'm angry, and I know that they'll understand.
Yeah.
And so I will say that, finding people who understand what you're going through can be super beneficial and super helpful and comforting. I would say be careful with that too. I feel like a lot of it is a comparison game. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I had this done, I'm worse. And I'm like, okay, granted, yes, you may be medically worse, but my problem, that doesn't make my problems any less valid.
Yeah.
Still hard for me. And so, to find people that aren't sitting there comparing what you're going
Hmm.
through, people who, hear you out and you hear them out. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely, I love that everyone is willing to support each other and be there. And I've
Hmm.
never been one to get in like the Facebook groups or anything like that. I know a lot of people have found good success in getting in those. I'm not. I prefer not to. I think my mom might be in one or two of them, but for
Yeah.
I'll pass. I have my few people. I have my people, and that's good for me. But
Yeah. I know it can be kind of a fine balance on social media between, like support and the comparison game. I have found that quite a bit. I try to just like anybody that does the comparison game kind of just like kill them with kindness and that, and
I
just be
know
like, I'm
that.
so sorry that you have it hard, you know?
I,
Because I feel like I want to say that everything comes from a good place, but like maybe sometimes it doesn't. But I try to just pretend that it does. And they're maybe just feeling like they need to explain more about it. I don't know.
I don't know if I'm delusional with this thought or what, but I like, the older maybe it comes with age and maturity. I
Hmm.
don't know. But whenever I have people message me and they're coming from a negative standpoint or a hate
Yeah.
standpoint or you know, a place that's not kindness and support, I feel bad for them. Like
Hmm.
genuinely my heart breaks because I'm like, they're going through so much that that's how they feel the need to respond. And that's how,
Hmm.
and to do it publicly too, whether you comment
Hmm.
or you DM, like, I mean, your name, your face, your profile is attached to that. And I'm like, it breaks my heart. So I try to, encourage them as well because I feel like they're the people that need the most encouragement.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just you got to kind of walk carefully because I share a lot. I think
Yeah.
I share enough. I feel like, um, but I still don't even share. I mean, I maybe share 25% of what I go through. So I'm
Yeah.
like, don't come at me making a statement that you think is right
Hmm.
when you've
I
seen.
know. I like sometimes, so I have been, I try on the podcast Instagram, I try to be like just as transparent and vulnerable as possible because I like think about like high school and like early college Lexi that like just didn't like see those things. I was like, oh, like I felt very, very alone in it. Like all of my symptoms were in my head type thing.
Yeah.
I've always really, really struggled with the like dynamic knit. My stomach just growled so loud. I don't know if like the
Hear it.
microphone caught that.
I didn't hear it.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, if that I hope
You'll
that the
have to edit
microphone
that
I
out.
don't know, I'm like that's gotta go. But I've always really, really, really struggled with like the dynamicness of my chronic illness. Like because I can be in so much pain one day that like I can barely walk. Like my cramps are so bad that I like can't stand up straight. Or I recently got diagnosed with I can't fucking say it. It's called spondy
Is it that? Is
something.
it ankylosing spondylitis or something?
It's not ankylosing, but it's just spondylitis. But
Yeah.
spondylolisthesis? Oh my
Huh.
God, I don't. It's a back thing. It's my lower back. The disc between my like L4 and L5 is degrading.
Uh-huh.
Very fun. Anyways, so that's a new diagnosis, like in the last month that I've been ignoring, kind of.
No.
I'm in physical therapy for it, but I am kind of ignoring it because I just like my doctor suggested spine surgery, and I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity for that right now.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I like there are some days that my back pain is so bad that like I literally cannot walk. Like my whole left leg is like numb and I can't walk.
Right.
But then also there are other days that I can go to a workout class and I'm fine. So like it is very confusing for me dealing with it. It's also very confusing for the internet to consume
That is,
because
yeah, because you're sick and that's fine, but then when you have a really good day, you're like,
Mhm.
maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, you had a good day, like you're better, and I'm like,
Hmm.
maybe I am, like
Yeah.
maybe you're right, and it's confusing for me. I understand how it could be confusing for them, and I try to. My thing is I'm like, you don't understand a life with chronic illness unless you have them, and I hope and
Yeah.
pray that you never have it. But I also want people to understand how hard it is, and I want people to understand the challenges that come with it. So I do try to be as transparent as possible on social media,
Hmm.
showing it so that they understand as much as they can without going through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the exact same way. It's just it can be like I sometimes get comments about how, like, how are you doing that workout class? But like yesterday, you were talking about how much pain you were in and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, because it depends on the day. And like, honestly, I could do that workout class and then it put me into a flare and then I'm not okay. But I'm still trying to like live life and do things that like make me happy. Like right now, I have this like Reformers Pilates membership that I got for Christmas that I'm trying to make the best out of. So I've been like sharing that on social media and I did have somebody message me and basically say that I was faking and I was like not actually, like, I don't actually have something wrong with my back if I can go to these
Girl,
workout classes. And I was like, I, I'm in physical therapy. Like, I'm going to the workout classes, but you don't see me in the hour-long workout class. Like, there are some movements that I don't do because I can't do them because of my back. But other things, like, and then I feel like I have to over-explain myself, and I'm like, no, like,
it's
it's
the
fine.
people, it for me, it's the people that you would think should understand, the people who have chronic illnesses that are like,
Yeah.
well, she's eat like I was questioned probably last year, I was just not doing well physically, mentally, like all the things. And I
Hmm.
have people coming at me and they're like, well, she can eat. She's faking it. And I'm like, you understand more than the
Hmm.
normal person what I'm going through. Why are you questioning?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe I do eat a lot, even though I shouldn't. But I do definitely suffer from that, and people don't see that.
Yeah.
But
You could also make your own decisions. Like, you don't have to, we'll just say, everybody be kind and let people make decisions. And also, let's just remind everybody that even though we're sharing stuff on social media, you're still not seeing every single second of the day. And you're not seeing, you know, everything that goes into it, like consequences of things or decisions that go into things. So let's just be nice.
perfectly said.
Be nice. To kind of wrap up our episode, is there anything else that you want to say to people?
Um, I think the one thing that I would probably say, and I heard it not too long ago from my therapist, and I was like, I love that. Is I feel like sometimes you get to the point where you're just like, how much more can my body take? Like I've been
Hmm.
through this, I've been through the ringer for so long. How much more can my body take until it breaks? And
Yeah.
you have been through 100% of your worst days, and you will get through 100% of your future ones.
Aw.
So I don't know, that kind of something about that just clicked, and I was like, okay, that's so true. I have made it through every single worst day I've ever had, and in the future I'll
Yeah.
do the same.
I love that. I love that. And then where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. I have the same username. It's Cara
Mhm.
underscore Bowman 12. Those are my
Perfect.
two public platforms, and yeah,
Yay. I'll also put those in the show notes so people can go look at those as well. And then I think that's it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was so fun.
having me, I loved it. I was so excited.